evening, and welcome to another episode of Argyle Life, Argyle Life's Green and White podcast on what was anything other than a run-of-the-mill night at Home Park under the lights. Argyle battered the Lions and removed the millstone of being bottom of the league around our necks. It was heaven in Devon within 7 minutes as agent Joe Bryan tapped into his own net to put his former club in front. And we never looked back. Hardy twice and Bundu scoring to make it 4-0. Bryan then scored at the right end, ruining Connor Hazard's clean sheet in a perfectly good podcast title. But we had the last laugh, putting the catitch among the pigeons of Millwall's flappy defence to make it 5. Argyle. Right. Joining me tonight are James Stables from One Team in Devon. How are you doing, James?
Yeah, very good. What a week. What a week. Feels like weeks ago that we were celebrating after Liverpool, but yeah, you're still in. We can tell you're in deepest, darkest Wembley from your connection quality.
Yep, absolutely. And Sam Down is here as well. Hello, Sam.
Yeah, I actually thought John was doing his broadcast from the Plymouth Cricket Club there, given the way the Wi-Fi quality started. No offense to good people at the Plymouth Cricket Club. I'm doing good, thank you. And yourself?
I could do the intro again if people didn't quite get the meal of it all. That was not a delay on the feed, by the way. That was just a touching tribute to our championship rivals. Sam, why don't you run through the game? And if you could actually run through the game this time rather than talking around the game, that would be appreciated.
Well, I think I did both actually, but yeah, I'll try and stick exclusively to the former this time. Again, it was an absolutely fantastic performance. I said on the previous pod after the Liverpool game that we raised the level in each moment since the debacle half-time against Burnley. Second half, we were a lot more solid. We showed signs of life. Sunderland, good performance, got a draw. West Brom, good performance, got a win. Liverpool got one of the most amazing wins in our history. And we thought, surely we can't keep raising the level to step up again. And you know what? In some ways we didn't, because the Liverpool performance was so amazing. But in other ways we did, in the sense that it was a really creative, attacking, strong, energetic performance. Absolutely knocked Millwall off the park in the way we played. That was really signs coming together of Muslic ball at its absolute best of what it can offer. First half, we raced into the lead. Brilliant bit of build-up play for Callum Wright, whipped the ball in for Hardy, who should have tapped it into an empty net. Didn't quite get its connection right, but as John alluded to in his intro, for those of you who may not have heard it, said that Joe Bryan was there to tap the ball into his own net. Agent Joe Bryan, who, if any of you will follow in the socials, scored his first goal for Plymouth Argyle since 2013. We then picked up the intention, didn't rest on our laurels at all, and then we soon got a penalty kick, again through fantastic counter-pressing. I think Millwall were trying to play out, and we won the ball back and got it into the box, won the penalty. And Hardy, again, never in doubt. And I kind of think Ryan Hardy has a bit of a knack of sending the keeper the wrong way a lot of the time, like more so than average for penalties, doesn't he? But that one was absolutely into the corner. I think that one was never in doubt. That was actually probably the best penalty of the 3 that he's taken of the last 3. Really, really well placed. Ryan Hardy for that second goal. We then just controlled it for a little bit. Bundu had a half decent chance to make it 3-0 after what would have been about 22 minutes or so. Millwall had virtually nothing all first half. We showed signs of quite dangerous attacking play. I'd say it was still first half was quite safety first, but when we did get forward, it was showed real signs of some nice play in and around the final third. Then the second half came out and we really, really raised the level. The second half was pure chaos ball. We were just throwing everything at them, not being too bothered if it came back to us, because then our defenders would just play quite a high line and would push it back up the field again. It was very much second half was a bit more focused on attack, just because we smelt blood, I think. Because again, that's not to undermine how good we were, but Millwall were really, really bad. You could see their heads, not literally, obviously, you could see their heads figuratively coming off on the pitch. The third goal, obviously, again, goes back to what I was saying, end to end. I think Paulson was still up the pitch from a set piece. Millwall countered, and it got back to Hazard, who immediately distributed the ball with a great long kick. Paulson knocks it down, and Bundu's there, and I think, oh no, he's taking too much with it. I thought he should have hit it first time. Obviously, I was wrong. He then squares, gets himself into a bit of a better space, and it's 3-0. And then within about 3 or 4 minutes after that, Hardy makes it 4. Again, this new role of Ryan Hardy, I'm going to probably repeat some of the talking points on the post Liverpool pod, because I think this just exemplified it even more. That really exemplified how he thrives in that new role, because he has that knack of picking up the ball in the wide areas and cutting into the central areas and having an angled shot on the keeper. Because I think if you look at Ryan Hardy's finishing record over the years, he really is best with the angled shots on goal. It's when he's running in down the centre of the goal and the keeper's making himself big and he's got to almost decide whether he's going one way or the other. That's when we see him miss some chances he should do better with, Ryan Hardy. But when he's having an angled shot and he can only go one way because he's at an angle, in that scenario, that's where his finishing really comes into his own, Ryan Hardy. And we saw that for the obviously Argyle's 4th goal, his 2nd goal last night. So that was, again, really, really encouraging. You see him thriving at his absolute best in this new system. Then I think we had a really lively 5 minutes after the 4th, and we thought, maybe a lively 2 or 3 minutes after the 4th, and we thought, hang on a minute, are we really going to go and absolutely batter them 6-0 here? And obviously it died down a little. Millwall got 1 goal from Brian. Today's trivia challenge for the chat is, and I don't know this one, by the way, this is genuinely me not being sure, when was the last time a player scored a goal and an own goal on the opposing team in an Argyle game? Because Sonny Bradley did it playing for Argyle. He scored for Argyle and also scored an own goal in 2016 at Stevenage, I believe it was. Yeah, Stevenage. But yeah, I can't recall it being in an opposition. But yeah, Brian with a quite an easy finish. Again, just switched off a little, very rare case of switching off. Made it 4-1. Still, pretty comfortable. Still was about 10 minutes to go. And they had a little spell after they got one back, and they were kind of coming at us a bit and thinking, oh, hang on a minute, if they get another, it could make it a bit tasty. But thankfully, we just rode that out. Maxi and Katic got some great blocks in the way during that little spell, and then we got control back going into the last, obviously, 5 minutes of stoppage time. And it started I don't know if it counts as a goal from a set piece, because it was almost probably it felt like it was scrambling around in a goal line clearance for the better part of 15 to 20 seconds. So it probably wasn't quite that long in reality, but it was a good length of time. It was scrabbling around there, and eventually Katic tapped it in. It was one of the utterly craziest goals I've seen at Home Park, just from the perspective of willing it into the net. I think only the Ryan Broom one in recent years was a more preposterous goal than that. It was an absolutely ridiculous goal, but we ended up scoring. And yeah, we're getting what Miron, as my dad has just said in the comments, we're getting what Miron promised. It's getting the ball up the pitch, fighting for everything. And I think what we really saw in the second half, which we hadn't seen up to then, was the attacking side of it. Because I think in every other game, as good as it has been, and again, this is not a dirty word necessarily, it was a bit more defence first, but what we saw, certainly in spells of that second half, was really going full throttle. And it almost seems mad to say when we scored 5 goals, but I think there is more to come from this team. There is another level that they can find. But yeah, as much as we did score 5 goals, Millwall were utterly terrible defensively. If we'd have really sort of found that level more consistently throughout the game, we would honestly think we could have maybe even scored 7 goals. I know that seems a bit preposterous there, and that's not a criticism. It's a sign that the side's really growing. And I still think there is another level they can find even on last night, but the improvement keeps on coming. We keep raising the bar. Like I said, we raised it. Burnley second half, Sunderland, West Brom, Liverpool, now Millwall. The only way we can raise it even further is if we go and absolutely knock Blackburn out the park and record a 3 or 4-0 win at the weekend, and we'll see. Maybe we will.
Thanks, Sam. James, anything in particular to add to that? Any moments that stood out to you that Sam didn't get to?
Well, let's just sort of rewind a little bit before the game. Obviously, coming off the back of fantastic performance of Liverpool, it's pretty obvious. Everyone was talking about whether we would have a lull in our intensity or concentration or focus. But I was really fascinated to see how the Millwall game would play out, because I think we all know that Millwall pride themselves on being a stodgy team that, will hit long balls, won't spend too long playing out from the back, will be direct, will be physical. And obviously we've thankfully, with our signings, have mitigated our weaknesses against some of those attributes now, where we're not going to be pushovers for teams playing long balls. I was really interested to see how a team that would probably opt not to play for through the lines how we would get turnovers, how we would parry their back line if they were just going to beat our press by hoofing the ball long, and how we would cope with that and what kind of game it would be. And I don't think anyone would have looked at me stupidly if I'd have said on a pod that it would be a nailed on 0-0 with two sort of attritional teams sort of going at each other long ball. And I with the energy levels depleted from Sunday, I wasn't really thinking it was going to be much of a goal fest. So obviously couldn't have been more wrong in that perspective. And it was really interesting. I think listening to Alex Neil's comments after the game, that they really went for I thought they were going to be the best team that would come down here and still go for a draw. I thought they would be of the ilk that they would come down. A draw would be a good result at home park, a place that's notoriously hard to come. And if they could grab something, on the break, or as they usually do, think of that game under Schumacher which ended with the Kessler Hayden body slam, that they would nick something from a set piece, and then as soon as they went one up, they would grind out the game. But they didn't come with that game plan at all. They seemed to actually come to play football, which was absolutely played into our hands of us swarming them and playing obviously this sort of pressing Muslic ball that's coming to fruition now. So yeah, just to sort of colour in the picture of what I expected from the game, it was totally different. One, that they didn't go for this sort of attritional warfare that they're famous for. They actually tried to play football against us, and how good we were at shutting that down. I think that's really why their heads fell off during the game, because it was something like, I'm only really repeating what came up in the press conference, that they were 5 clean sheets out of their last 6. So to be 2-0 down in 10 minutes was huge, and obviously a position that we've not been in too many times. So whoever would have predicted or scripted how it went, I don't think anyone would have predicted this.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, there was a question on social media earlier from Matt Dorr, or more of a comment actually, who said, I know a few people weren't very happy about a more direct style. And he may have been referring to some people in this chat room, possibly not, but it does apply to you. But for me, it's been fantastic and a lot more exciting than 100 passes left and right. Penny, for your thoughts?
Firstly, I wasn't as such concerned about a more direct style. It was more about what I considered would be a more defensive style. Was more what I was kind of worried would be the problem. Because I do think that ultimately we have set our stall on having a philosophy of being an attacking team, in the sense that not only is that more entertaining for fans, not only was it quite suited to our squad, but also that it's better for developing young players, it's better for showcasing talent with our model of selling players for profit, etc., etc. So I wasn't as such worried about being more direct. I was worried about being more defensive. I mean, look, John said to me watching the game, I was watching the game with John yesterday, that third goal, and indeed much of the game, was how football's being played in his dreams, which, correct me if I'm wrong, John, you would classify as being quite blood and thunder, long, big long balls up the pitch, battles, knockdown, and goal, which isn't how football's played in my dreams.
To be clear,
yeah,
it's more about just going from defense to attack in the shortest possible time. For me, I don't see it as being about blood and thunder necessarily, or long ball necessarily. It could be, a super like Puhac's ball against West Brom. It's not really a long ball, just a superb penetrating ball over the top. But it's about minimizing the number of touches from defense to attack is my sort of preferred way of playing, I guess.
Sure, and that's fine. And I'll be honest, my preferred way of playing, if you would say, in the parallel, in the theory of infinite parallel universe, if everyone has a parallel universe where they're a successful football manager, where FM becomes reality, John's would be playing that style. Mine would not be. Mine would be the sort of pirouetting, balls through defence, lovely, back and forth passes, triangles, not just, slow passing like you maybe see from Pep Guardiola, but really quick, rapid fire passing football, whereby you just open teams up through pure through ball passing, penetrative play. So my dream style would be a little bit more different to John's. But that being said, I can very gladly compromise on it not being my absolute dream style when A, it's successful, and B, it's still very fun to watch, which absolutely that ticks both of those boxes. I mean, I'm not going to, suddenly say it's my absolute, the way I would play in my absolute dreams if I were a successful football manager. But like I say, it doesn't have to be my absolute preferred style to be enjoyable, because A, even if it was ultra defensive, long ball, etc., that's still a lot more tolerable to enjoy if you're winning every week. And two, it absolutely isn't that. There was some, like I said earlier, the second half had much more of an emphasis on attack, and even in the first half, there were some moments of really lovely attacking play in the final third. So when we're seeing that level of improvement, that extent of improvement, the fact that it's not my absolute, for those of you who are an FM player, football manager player, you go-to tactic where you pull all the levers exactly where you want them, and you save that as your go-to tactic on the editor, and you can come back to it anytime you like. My go-to tactic would be essentially probably not too distinct from shoey ball, maybe even more attacking than that. Whereas John's go-to tactic would be perhaps very close to Muslic ball. But yeah, I'm not going to complain about style. I know that people were sort of saying I was worried about the style, and again, to go back to my point that I've kind of circled back round to, that I answered this question with, I wasn't worried as such about it being direct. I was worried about it being too defensive. And ultimately, yeah, as much as I'd love to see us play like Brazil, as the comment says, we'll never be Brazil, as much as my absolute dream is playing like Brazil, what I would say is that if you're going for probably my second best option, playing the kind of Bielsa way of penetrative direct football is probably more enjoyable to watch than playing slow passing football of the Spain side that won the Euros in the early 2010s. So even though it isn't my absolute favourite style, it's maybe up there in my kind of second favourite style, or it's certainly very enjoyable if we're winning. So yeah, to answer the question, no, the worries I had about the style of play are very fast evaporating at this point. I still would like to, before they completely evaporate, I still would like to see how this style of play responds to a bad run. Like maybe with a bad run, we might just be pushed into being ultra defensive and sort of retreat into our shell in that way. As long as we still keep playing with that fearless intent when we are having a bad run, that would I'd say completely win me over. But yeah, Muslic ball so far is absolutely great. I'm finding it very much enjoyable to watch. And the more attacking we see it getting, the more enjoyable I'll find it. So yeah, my concerns about the style are perhaps not 100% evaporated, but certainly very fast evaporating. And if we keep on winning, I won't give a hoot.
Hold on to your hats, because I believe I am about to show a positive comment from Gaza Brownhigh. And here it is. The turnaround is unbelievable. Night and day from the Rooney days, but it will still be a miracle to keep us up. Well, I said it was positive. It's kind of positive. To sustain this 15 games will be really tough, but at least we have hope. Guys, we love your comments, and that is probably about as positive as we've seen one in a few weeks, so we'll take that. Brilliant. James, I'm going to come to you. We have recently done a little feature of people singling out a player, and I know that there's someone you want to single out from last night for special praise, who is conveniently someone we didn't really touch on at great length on Sunday, even though he probably deserved it. So take it away.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't touch on him, because I've had him. I did a One Team Endeavour newsletter after Liverpool, but I didn't want to get into any analysis or go too deep into individual. I want to keep it sort of vibes only, and it was only released hours away from the Millwall game, so that's the perils of actually writing stuff down that comes very, 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 very dated very quickly in this league. But I really wanted to write at the time about Callum Wright, someone who obviously has been a bit part play. Obviously, he had a cameo period under Rooney, coming on as a sort of super sub and sort of playing basketball, coming and receiving the ball from defence or from the goalkeeper and sort of bouncing it up play when we were inevitably chasing 2-goal deficits at the end of games at home park. But obviously he's been revitalised under Muslic, and I think actually Muslic talked about that a little bit in the press conference, which talking about how he hadn't really spotted that he was the perfect player for that front three pressing unit at first, and obviously was defaulting to our multi-million pound acquisitions as you would, and then realised that he's actually really, really athletic, strong, fit, and that he's kept himself in that condition, ready for his opportunity. And I've been through a couple of times in my mind, the only non-defensive player that played the whole Liverpool game and the whole Millwall game. So that's 190 minutes of football in 4 days, playing a aggressive press with that front three, and even did a really good job of subbing in at right back for Sorinola when he was jumping around on one leg at the end of the Liverpool game. And obviously we know that Wright has his limitations, I guess, that he's been victim of some sort of moments where sort of had your head in your hands as a goal that was given away at the beginning of the last season, that when he got his first opportunity to stick to my mind. And then that the West Brom game where he sort of could only take the ball under his spell and break free and contrive to hit his heels, and kind of sort of is the sort of stereotype of a sort of Callum Wright performance. But it's been absolutely brilliant. The energy levels that he's showing, the way that he's taken the instruction from Muslic makes it very that clarity in his wishes for the system has been taken to heart by the players. But I've been watching that fantastic bit of Argyle analysis by Aaron Cusack on Argyle TV, and I was watching him in particular closely in the Millwall game, the way he sort of leads the press on that side, how they'll rotate back into midfield in order to crowd out options in the opposition's midfield and cut the passing lanes and stop them playing through us. And then he'll come out and press the ball when required, chase back. He's absolutely relentless, and I just think that he's almost one of many options, or one of many examples where Muslic is actually finding the perfect options for him are within this squad. There just didn't happen to be the players that we were looking through when we were talking about the best squad, when we were trying to figure out the dying days of Rooney and the early days of Muslic. So I just wanted to single him out for praise there, because I think he's gone under the radar.
Well deserved. And Sam, what about you?
Firstly, I really want to echo what James has said on Callum Wright. I think he's really growing into his own on this system. I think the cross it's still. I know we still sometimes touch on the stat that he's in our entire time since promotion to the Championship. He's only got 0 goals and 1 assist, but that was as good as an assist last night for the own goal. That really should have been an assist. That sort of dangerous whipped cross that he put in there. So absolutely echo that. I'm going to. There's a lot I could do. I'm gonna touch a little bit more on Ryan Hardy, just based on the fact that it is really absolutely finding his own best role in the system. Even aside from his involvement in the goals that I've already touched on, his hard work off the ball, his pressing, the intensity of his pressing is far better than anything we've seen from him up to now. He's not only is he getting up to players and sort of forcing them into mistakes, he's closing off the passing lanes. And when he picks up the ball, he runs into the area. Sometimes he'll shoot, like he scored for the 4th goal last night, his 2nd goal that way. Sometimes he'll make a lovely pass like he did to Bundu in the first half yesterday. So I think finally now, he's been a great player for us up to now. I think he's absolutely and fully finding his very best position he could have. And like I made the point on the pod the other night, I'll repeat it for those who maybe didn't hear or want reminding of it. Sometimes you just have a manager and player combination who one manager absolutely gets the best out of a player, really gets them, gets their role, gets where they need to thrive. And I think like John Sheridan got Conor Hurricane, like Derek Adams got Graham Carey, and like Stephen Schumacher got Danny Mayer. I absolutely think Miron Muslic completely and utterly gets Ryan Hardy. He gets how to get the best out of him. He gets what it's all about. And I think just maybe after 5 great years he's had with this club across loan and permanent spells, the best might be yet to come for Ryan Hardy. I just hope he keeps this streak going and keeps his confidence. And when he does have a little run of 2 or 3 games without a goal, if Muslic can install into him that self-belief, just to keep on finishing chances, just to keep calm, not lose his head like maybe he might have done once or twice. The best really could be yet to come. And if we can stay in this league, which I'm now inexplicably thinking we can. Well, it's not inexplicably because we're only 1 point off, but inexplicably to where we were thinking we can. You know, who on earth would have said? I literally said after the Burnley game, all I want is a bit of pride. I'm not bothered about getting any result at Sunderland. And then even when we got the draw at Sunderland, I said for the West Brom game, I'm not that bothered if we lose. Again, all I want is a bit of pride. I don't want the home fans, because I know that most fans don't go to many away games. So I don't want the home crowd to see 3 awful home performances in a row after QPR and then Burnley. All I wanted was a bit more pride, but we got far more than that. We got to win. Liverpool, for goodness sake, who would have even dreamed it? And then, obviously, the Millwall game. So, factoring all that in, it just does show the amazing progress we're making. So that was it on Ryan Hardy, which segued into just a speech about how great things are generally. I really want to pick up on Adam Randall again. I think he's taking the captaincy role into his absolute own, into his stride. There was the clip on Matchday Moments of him doing a little speech, geeing up the crowd, giving it a bit, geeing up the team, I mean to say, in the huddle, giving it a bit of motivation, telling them what to do, reminding them of their instructions. And I think it's really interesting. I haven't actually seen anybody make this point yet. If somebody has made it and I've missed it, then I apologise. I'm not trying to plagiarise their point, but I'm amazed I've not seen anybody pick up on the fact that Adam Randall, since he's been captain, has brought back the pre-match huddle. Those of us who went in the Paul Sturrock years, Ian Holloway years, will know that the pre-match huddle was a pivotal feature before every game. We would always have the huddle. Players would always get together. There'd always be a whoa from the crowd as the huddle came to an end. And it went away, I think, sometime during the administration years. I think there might have been 1 or 2 attempts of bringing it back, but we've never had it consistently in a run of games. And I think since he's been the captain, Adam Randall has brought back the huddle, and I don't think that's the coincidence, that he is the Plymouth boy. He's the one who would have grown up watching that team to some extent. Maybe not the Sturrock years. He might have been in play school at that time, which is showing my age maybe. But certainly the Holloway years, without a doubt, I think he would have. I think he said that was his first memory of watching Argyle in an interview was under Ian Holloway. And he said Yeah, as the comment from our favourite anonymous commenter has come up on screen, said that Sunday was important, but this game was effing massive, as he said it, and he was absolutely right. And yeah, that's no coincidence with the Plymouth boy who knows that part of our heritage of our club and everything the Huddle represents has brought back the Huddle. That is a big part of our upturn in form. And I think absolutely Adam Randall is going to be the new long-term captain. I know, without wanting to set John off, telling him he's going to go on to his usual rant about how Joe Edwards isn't retired yet, I do think that maybe with the sheer, demands of the intensity and the pace of getting up and down the line, Sorinola is going to be a bit more of a regular starter, even when they're both fully fit. So I wonder if Joe Edwards will obviously still continue to play, if he's not going to play so many minutes, if Adam Randall might become the long-term captain. And if he does, I think he's absolutely fully earned it.
Nope. On mute. Or if we lost you to Wembury.
Houston, we have a problem. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Apparently, I do have the comment coming up saying Sam needs fibre too, and I absolutely do have fibre. I don't know what happened there. I've got a feeling it could be due to the fact that John's hosting through his Wi-Fi could have had a knock-on impact on me.
Are you back, John? Or do we need to fill?
Right. I think I'm back.
He's back.
I think I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Houston, can you hear me? Good.
I
wanted to say very quickly that I wanted to just give a shout out to Paulson and Dog Better, the pair of them. I think that earlier in the season, they were such a punchline, or not even a punchline, like a nerves line when it was announced that they were in the team. You'd be in the pub with your mates and they'd turn to you and go, it's Paulson and Dog Better. And you'd be like, oh, well, that means we're going to lose tonight. Which is very unfair on them, I guess. But I guess also sort of was just indicative of a game where we're rotating, not taking it too seriously, not our best. Those two players deserve to have a completely different reputation at the club now. It's not that they play well every week. It's not even necessarily that they were the best players on the park last night, but Muslic just raised their game just like he's raised everyone else's game. That assist from Paulson for the third goal, which, as Sam alluded to earlier, was exactly my type of goal, showed desire, but also quality. It's a great, not only to win the header, but to direct it as well. I think there was a comment earlier from someone saying that Paulson had, was geeing people up at the back. Better as well, I thought had a pretty good game last night. Someone actually also said in the comments, I can't find it now, does he win an award for, I think actually might have been earlier on Twitter actually, does he win an award for the best bit of skill followed by the worst shot in Argyle history? I don't know if one of you wants to weigh in on that momentarily, but no, I was really dead pleased for them both. And as Alex Thorne says, coming up on screen, Ogbetta's interview post-match was brilliant. That was his first win in an Argyle shirt, believe it or not, at least in a game that he started, and he was absolutely made up. And I think, I still don't think they're the two of the best players that we have, but that the sort of bugbear of Paulson and Ogbetta are starting is probably laid to rest now a little bit. I don't know if either of you wants to talk about either of them before my designated 2 bits of internet connection collapses again.
Well, I think if we're going to talk about that header, it was quite interesting in the press conference that it was revealed that that was the sort of effect of the new set piece coach, Hubert. How are we pronouncing this? Oya? Let's not go there. But the new, they're talking about sort of the second. I actually should have researched what they had what the terminology is. It's not sort of second phase, but second wave. I think it was of a set piece situation where when the first wave has dissipated, how we keep that alive and create a second chance. And it was a dead ball situation, which saw Hazard lump it forward and pick out Paulson, but he was obviously he had stayed high and wide in anticipation of that ball. So we were shouting like for a set piece coach for pretty much the whole of the Rooney era and beyond, and we're already seeing the fruits of that with what wasn't just a great header and a great piece of play from, and as you say, a player that should no longer strike fear into us when we see his name on the team sheet. But the fruits of that appointment coming through already, and it was a great piece of play, and as we've already spoken about, a sublime finish as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of love for them in the comments as well. Sam, this one for you. This was an earlier social media comment from Andy in Oxford. We all piled on to criticise the chairman for Foster, for Rooney, and for taking a gamble on Muslic instead of going with Shuey. Yes, he's made mistakes, big mistakes, but he's a fan of the club, not a phony. Maybe it's time to praise him for going with his gut. What say you?
Correct. Absolutely correct. Yeah, I'll call it when I get it wrong. I was absolutely convinced Schumacher was the best option. I mean, I certainly thought he was the safest option. And once again, no doubt people will tell me off for mentioning Schumacher, despite the fact that I almost only ever entirely do so when people ask me questions about him or implicitly about him. The decision so far has been absolutely and utterly vindicated. You could argue that even if it goes completely belly up, it will always on some level be vindicated because of the Liverpool win and even if the Muslic era ends badly and he gets fired, you could still argue it will on some level be vindicated just for that alone, for the financial support it's given the club, but more importantly, the memories it gave us. So you could argue in a way it's absolutely inherently vindicated, but it's showing signs that through medium and long-term success, it could absolutely be vindicated. He went with his gut instinct, but you know what? Not only gut instinct, I also think that was genuinely, he looked at all the evidence, looked at the brilliant job Muslic did at Sutcliffe, and how well he presented in interview, because we know what an incredible talker he is. He could absolutely talk the hind legs off a donkey, Miron Muslic, without a doubt. And you know what? I think, and this is not in a bad way, but everything he says has an impact. It's with a reaction in mind. He said stuff to create an effect in a good way, but in a way to whip people up and use the right combination of words that will get people to buy into him. Like the example I'll give is when he said about when the fan base were a little bit frustrated about transfers falling through, he said, "I'm not going to sell the club to any player. I want people who want to be here." But then, obviously, as it turned out, in a completely unrelated comment, Katic said 2 weeks later how brilliantly Muslic sold the club to him. So, you know, you have to take the comments with a little bit of a pinch of salt to some extent, because I do think he is saying stuff to create an effect, as all managers are, but it's in an absolutely brilliant way. He is the best manager head coach. Sorry, Aaron, if you're about to say it in the comments. He is the best manager or head coach at handling the media Argyle I've ever had in my lifetime by a considerable distance. And that's the money to Ian Holloway, who was absolutely incredible at it. Muslic is even better again. The media management side of his job is absolutely fantastic. The way he handled the Whittaker stuff, yes, it seems like Argyle were in the right, the more the infinite submersion with their version of what's happened. Even aside from that, it would have been so easy just to say, he didn't play, it's an internal matter, whatever, or use the old line that Nance used for Gibson of he's got a knock. Maybe Gibson did have a knock, but it would have been a bit coincidence. So, there would have been ways Muslic could have handled that. But the way he did it created a siege mentality of the Argyle fans against Whittaker to an extent, but a siege mentality of the Argyle fans. And also, it stopped the external media talking about the fact we just got battered 5-0, and it got them talking about this other controversy instead, which is the classic Jose Mourinho trick, say something to deflect from the loss. So again, he's so good at that side of stuff. He's brilliant at handling the media. He's a brilliant person by all accounts. The way he interacts with people, the way he motivates people, the story of his life is incredible. I'm sure most of you have probably heard it. The way he talks about being a refugee in Bosnia and with all that happened, the awful stuff that happened there in the 80s and 90s, and him having to literally pack a bag and run overnight. And you can tell the way he loves football permeates from every word he says, that football brings people together, that even if you don't speak the language, football is the universal language of the world. And I think that's incredibly true. And I just think that there is the potential there. Assuming he doesn't get poached early, which let's be honest, there's every chance of if he keeps us up, he'll be on club's list. But if he does stay for a long period of time, I think there is a chance he becomes an absolute Argyle legend in a way that not many other managers have, even the promotion-winning ones, because I think he's really struck a chord with the Green Army, and we'll all be having nachos and Fanta when Argyle stay up.
The funny thing about Muslic, to some extent, I might be putting my tin hat on for this, is that tactically, the closest we've sort of had to Muslic is Foster, in terms of the way the team's set up, the way he wants to play, the way he wants to press, the ideas that Foster brought are not a million miles away from Muslic's ideas. In many ways, they're just the polar opposite type of person, where Foster was sort of bland. For all of the Muslic's qualities that we just spoke through, Foster has every single opposite quality, and he wasn't able to inspire the fans, and also he wasn't able to inspire players to get the tactics and to get the style of play that he wanted, and it just ended up being extremely defensive and hoofy. When if you take a look at that Borough game, it was pretty much the only really good performance of the Foster era. That was kind of like the closest thing we've probably ever had to Muslic ball. So just quite interesting in a way, where I think we were on the right path with Foster in terms of where we were trying to get to, the style we were trying to play, how we looked at the league and the riches of other teams, and where we could stamp our impression. We just got it completely wrong with the actual implementation, the man, and there's so many parallels. The way Muslic has brought in these excellent coaches with him, while Foster had none. So it's just quite interesting that to draw some parallels between the two, because tactically they are not like night and day, but it's the way that Muslic has used the media, used his skills as a communicator, as a coach. And I think I wrote in the newsletter when Muslic was appointed that Foster ended up being a kind of a Timu Muslic, really. Well, we seem to have got the real deal this time around.
I thought it was interesting that he mentioned in the press conference last night, I believe, when asked, I think, by Chris Errington about bringing in the set piece coach. And he said, yeah, the reason I did it is because I'm a very demanding guy. Basically, I'm a perfectionist, and this is an important element of the game, and it's not good enough to have someone whose job is to focus on this a little bit and do other stuff. I want someone who's focused on that all the time. The attention to detail. And as you said, when you compare that to Foster, who not only didn't bring in a coaching staff, but actively sounded like Simon Ireland had been brought in over his head when Ireland did come in, didn't really make particularly positive comments about him in the media. He just seems to be Muslic to be in a totally different stratosphere to any of the managers we've recently had. Actually, maybe not Schumacher in terms of managerial ability. I think Schumacher is a very good manager. Before I get Sam set off on me, but here we go. Hello, testing. Yeah, I was going to say, I think the way he's doing things it's very obvious he's been at a club that's played in Europe that has a very high standard of doing things. And I think even by Hallett's own admission, maybe we don't have some of those things at Argyle. We're still growing. Hopefully he can kind of help us to sort of accelerate that process. James, there's another comment earlier from Jack Leslie on social media saying, just how are we going to juggle a promotion push and the Europa League campaign next season? But I guess the serious question there is, what is the limit for this team? Now, obviously, we all will be absolutely thrilled with survival, but we're only 1 point off safety. What is the limit? Or do you think this is still very much a touch and go thing in terms of staying up? How should we be thinking about the rest of the season, in short?
Well, we're 11th in the form table, so that gives us a little bit of positive data to work through. I did kind of calculate, obviously, with the last 6 games. If we take our last 6 games, I think it's two wins, 2 draws, 2 losses. If we took that PPG for the rest of the season, I think someone will probably correct me. I've done the maths wrong, and absolutely terrible at maths. But that would give us 48 points if we continue the last 6 game trend. Which, given we've played most of our recent games at home, but some of the early games in that run were shocking. You can kind of start to think, how are we better than that? Are we better than an equal number of wins, draws, and losses over a 6-game period? Or are we better than that now? But if we do keep that up, 48 points might not be enough this season. So I think while we are, a few games ago, I couldn't even speak the words that we would even survive. I just couldn't believe it. After Liverpool, I thought, well, maybe we could, and now I'm fully bought into the idea of us staying up. There is still a mathematical difficulty of us staying up, and we need to accumulate points within this lovely run of potential 6-pointers and not be leaving it to Leeds on the last day of the season. So with the goal difference as it is, with the fact we're playing Leeds on the last day of the season, I mean, why? Obviously now thinking, why don't we beat them? But you'd definitely rather be going into that game with over the 50-point mark and not requiring a result like we did last season. There is still a lot of work to do. We have to hit some serious form to stay up this season. So granted, there's that. There's also a little point of, I just want to dampen everyone's spirits basically in this monologue, that we obviously have seen good runs of form even this season, and we had that lovely run under Rooney when we moved up the table, and then when we came back from the international break, we'd been completely worked out, and we suddenly didn't have it our own way anymore. And looking at the way we play, I don't see like an inherent weakness in the team like we did under Rooney, which was a sort of any form of basic pressing would turn us into a whole team of sort of uncooked wet chicken fillets. But there doesn't seem to be an inherent weakness that people would clock onto and exploit, because we just pack the midfield. We've got big lads at the back to hoof the ball out. It seems to be a pretty strong structure. I can't see how wrong it could go. But as soon as teams start to realise that we're got something about us and we're a danger, maybe teams come down here looking for a point where they were looking for 3 easy points. So I don't think it's going to be easy to the end of the season. So we still have to be really, really, really strong in the next season. To answer the question, we're going to have to do some big recruitment when we go for our playoffs push next season.
To follow up on that, I mean, that's a really interesting point that James made there. I would say the one way I am a little nervous about seeing if a team might play against us in terms of how we respond to that is if a team just tries to out Argyle, in the sense that if they play like we did at Sunderland away in the first half, that a team just sits in, tries to counter us on the break, or, well, that would be one way. And if a team just, because ultimately, yes, the chance creation in the Millwall game last night was amazing, but there were a couple of mistakes from them. And also in the other games, well, we've restricted Sunderland, West Brom, Liverpool, for goodness sake, to very low expected goals against. Our expected goals for were fine, but not utterly spectacular. So I suppose if a team just went defence first against us, that would present a challenge. I'm not saying it's a challenge we wouldn't be capable of overcoming, because Miron is a far smarter guy than Wayne Rooney, and I think he would make the adaptation. I honestly think that if that was the way to play, we could just maybe play out from the back a bit more, maybe just take our time and play through teams a bit more if that was what was genuinely needed. So I would say that is one potential adaptation teams can make against us. The other one would be if teams just got better at playing through our press, because our pressing last night, and I feel wanted to mention that, because our pressing was great. The way we pressed in triangles was great. So many times you would see Randall would come in and close off a passing lane, and then you would see Sorinola come in from the right of the player, and then you would see, I don't know, Callum Wright or Hardy or even Bundu come in from the left of the player, and we would see that triangle tactically close off a passing line, and it was great. If teams just maybe figure that out and just try and maybe play through it a bit quicker, again, that would be an adaptation. And again, this is not me reverting to misery mode here, because I absolutely have strong faith that Muslic could play through those adaptations. But there is a chance teams figure out how to play against us to some extent. It may be that we are still genuinely good enough at executing the pressing that they can't do it, or it may be that even if teams do find us out, we counter-adapt to their adaptation. But I think it's worth pointing out that this is still a very new style. Teams who've done all their scouting work at Plymouth Argyle up to now would not have expected Plymouth Argyle to play like this. And when they've got, maybe not so much for the Blackburn game, because it's still pretty early, but maybe for the Luton game, the Cardiff game, when those teams have got a few more games of Muslic Porter for their analysts and their coaches to go over and to present to the players, teams may have a better idea how to play against us. And it is important to not get frustrated when that happens, because it's key to ask how we respond to the adaptation. At the end of the day, a team having an adaptation against us, that doesn't mean that it's doomed. It just means we have to either be good enough to not matter about their adaptation, or it means we have to counter-adapt to their adaptation. Can Miron Muslic do that? I absolutely think he can. But yeah, I agree with what James said. It is easy to forget how incredibly happy and confident we all were after Blackburn home. Goodness me, even in the Foster era, it is incredible. Muslic has currently got 7 points from 3 league games. So did Foster after Huddersfield, Cardiff, and Swansea. I'm playing devil's advocate. Do I think it will go the same way? No, I don't. I think he is night and day ahead of those two. But what James is saying is a fundamental point. It's correct. It's important not to hang the bunting out yet. We will have a little bad run at some point, without a doubt. If we don't, then he will get poached. If we carry on, not losing and winning like this to the end of the season, we'll probably come mid-table and he will get poached. But we will have a bad run. It's important to see how we adapt. But he's given survival a real chance. Whereas I said, like, maybe 1% after the Burnley game. After the West Brom game, I was still only about 20%. The Liverpool game, even though it wasn't a league game, I maybe went up to about 30% just because of how blooming good we were. And I think now I'm basically at a coin toss. There is a very strong chance we stay up. There is also still a very strong chance we don't, because ultimately we always see towards the end of the season, the teams at the top start to crack a bit under the pressure, and the teams at the bottom pick up a bit more points. Happens March, April, without fail, every season. So my earlier forecast that I've always said for a while was we're going to need 52 points again to do it. I'm now thinking that might be 48, 49. Just because even if teams do pick up, their current... So the team in 22nd currently, if I can just get the league table up on my phone, I won't share my screen, unlike some occasional guests on this podcast. Yeah, but I was going with their points. Smart, Alec. The Hull are on 29 points from 31 games. So that extrapolated point per game over the season, well, it's about 43, isn't it? So let's have a look. 29. Yeah, sorry, this is very professional, and that should have done this.
And also, Sam, Derby are out of the relegation zone, but only just, and they've played a game more, I believe. So that would probably be the more apt.
So at the moment, the projected points tally for 22nd is going to be about 42 or 43 points. Now, do I think that's what will keep us up? No, just because every year, March and April, the teams at the bottom pick up more points than they do probably elsewhere. But I'm now thinking about, I was thinking we're going to need 52. I'm now thinking we're going to need like 47, 48. And that seems a lot more doable, because that is literally, of the remaining 15 games, let's say 5 wins and like 4 draws gets us to 47. That might be enough. 5 wins, 4 draws, and 6 defeats out of the remaining games. Like, that suddenly feels really, really doable in a way that it didn't at all up to now. So we've got every chance, absolutely every chance. And well, I said it was a coin toss. If you hold a gun to my head and make me decide right now one way or the other, yeah, I think we'll do it.
The classic Sam down 50-50, where one of the 50s is weighted more highly than the other.
If you read Nate Silver on the election, he said it was a coin toss, but he was 51% for Kamala Harris, which, given the actual outcome, doesn't bode too well for the prediction I just made, does it? But there we go.
I wanted to display this comment again from Anzu Pham, saying, I think the thing that makes me confident is what we're doing isn't anything clever or new. It's just simple football and maximum effort from the lads. And I think I agree with this. I think that, yeah, it's obviously possible that we could get found out, or that Muslic could get found out. It's possible, I mean, likely that, teams that are better than us on paper with good managers will try and work out ways to nullify us. But I sort of think that, unlike Rooney Ball, which turned out to be very easy to nullify and not very flexible, this sort of style is harder to stop because I think it is simpler, right? Like, it is just, let's have as few touches as we can from front to back, or back to front even. But the sort of challenge is stop us doing it. The challenge is not work out a very kind of cerebral way of blocking certain lanes where we like to play our football, and it's all kind of very clever and intricate and tactical. It is, you're going to need to outfight us, you're going to need to outbattle us, and you're going to need to just stop us doing this very simple thing. It's about doing the simple things well and effectively. So I think that's a very good comment. But the concern I have, and I wanted to sort of open this up to you two, was this more in line with this comment from Philip Bayliss, who says, we need luck with injuries because if Hardy and Bundu can't play, we have no pace up front. And this sort of ties into other comments we've had throughout the evening. Gaza Brownhide there with a back to his normal pessimism by saying that he's worried about Tijani shot up at the back, but not sure we have enough goals. Quite a few comments along these lines about Beidou not really showing anything again when he came on last night. On the one hand, when players came off the bench last night, we were 4-0 up and cruising, and it didn't really matter what was going to happen in the rest of the game, in all likelihood. But there was a noticeable drop-off in intensity in the attacking areas in the last 20 minutes last night. Callum Wright is and Hardy are very good at that pressing in behind the striker game, as we discussed at length earlier. But I don't know if it's Al-Hajj's game. I don't know if it's Beidou's game. Up front, yeah, we're a little bit light as well. And obviously then Katic and Maxi at the back have both been absolutely unbelievable. If one of them gets injured at Blackburn, say, is that going to weaken our confidence again in defence? Is there a concern, in other words, that the bigger problem is not going to be Muslic getting found out tactically, but if we just get unlucky with injuries to key players again, do we have the ability to then, change things up again? If we are reverting to a very simple style, surely that requires having the players fit who can execute it consistently. And if we don't, then even just a sort of very small drop off in intensity seems to be we could be in a bit of trouble. I don't know which of you want to take this first.
I'll go
Sam,
first. I'll go first.
Jump in.
Yeah, I'll go first on that one. I think that the way I described the subs is Beidou did himself absolutely, Al-Hajj did himself absolutely no harm coming off the bench. I thought he looked really bright, really lively. He took the corner that led to the 5th goal. Beidou didn't really do himself any good off the bench. And again, there were a couple of moments where you could see he was trying to play the pressing game, but he was a little bit rabbit in the headlights. Didn't quite know what he was doing, where he was meant to be. Just not through lack of effort, but lack of sharpness, maybe lack of tactical awareness of the system. He hasn't played in it as much as others have, but then when you look at Al-Hajj, the fact he came on and really threw himself into the game and got involved in the goal, that's what you want your subs to be doing when you're coming on at 4-0 up. You don't want them just to be like a rabbit in the headlights, which Beidou kind of was to some extent. I do agree. It is feeling a little bit dependent on the first choice team. I think Al-Hajj could definitely come in. I'll tell you what I'd actually like to see if we do have a need to rest the players in the 10 is Bali Mumba as one of the number 10s, because I do think that he is a little bit lost for a role in this system, in the sense that I think he's not going to play often at left wing back because obviously Puach is ahead of him and now a better ahead of him. So clearly he is, like, for now, the second choice right wing back. But whether he still will be when Joe Edwards is fit, I don't know. Because Muslic does not like players playing on their weaker foot. He wants, if you're right footed, he wants you on the right side. If you're left footer, he wants you on the left side. That's very much a pillar of how he likes to play. So it does present a difficulty for Bali Mumba because whilst he can play on the right-hand side, it's going to be tough to dislodge Soranola. And Mumba's own football philosophy as a player, if you like, is very different to Muslic's philosophy as a manager. in the sense that Mumba really loves to cut inside. He loves to be on the left, going on to his stronger foot, which isn't the way Muslic wants to play. So there is a real clash there, I should say. So how do we find a place for Ollie Mumba? Is it just you have him as like third choice left wing back, third choice right wing back? He occasionally gets a few minutes at the end of games, filling in here, there, and everywhere. Or do you reinvent him as one of the number 10s in the system? Because I think he can do that. We know that under Schumacher at the start of last season, he played in a 4-3-3 as one of the inside forwards, wingers, whatever you want to call it. Not to an amazing level, but certainly to a better level than what he's been playing this for large parts of this season. So I think that would probably be it. I think one thing he's really good at is carrying the ball inside. So if he picks up the ball, whether that's as a wide right forward or a wide left forward, he can take the ball inside like Hardy does and get that angled shot away. He's not a slow player. He's no slouch at all. He's good at carrying the ball from wide areas into central areas. So he's not going to be a wing back because he's not left-footed and he's not the most comfortable playing the way Muslic wants on the right side. So we have him as an inside forward and we have him who can cut inside. So I think you can play Ollie Mumba as one of the 10s. And I think if we're going to get the best out of him in this Muslic ball system, that's the way we're going to do it. So we have got players who can come in. Al-Haj can come in. Mumba can come in. I really hope we see more of Beidou because, goodness me, we spent a lot of money on him. Obviously, sunk cost fallacy and all that. If he doesn't make it better, there's no point playing him. There's no point throwing money after a sunk cost. But hopefully with a bit more sharpness, a bit more awareness of the system, he can find his role in the system. But at the minute, he does look like he's really, really struggling. And that's a slight area of concern in an otherwise very happy day. The central striker role might be a bit more of an issue because I think you've comfortably got Al-Haj and I would try Mumba for the inside forwards. Bundu seems to be pretty much the only one who can play that central striker role because Hardy is now absolutely a number 10 in this system without fail. Obafemi, maybe, but he's so hit and miss. He's not performed well for much of his time here. And Welsh Muslic did say he's happy with his improved effort. There is still the fact that he's a short bloke for a system that requires quite a big striker, ideally. So then the only obvious one that leaves is Tijani, and he's been a bit hit and miss, to say it as best we can. He has had some good games off the bench, but also some poorer ones. And there's the question of fitness. He clearly isn't being trusted with a great deal of minutes yet for fitness reasons as much as anything. So, yeah, I agree the risk of injury to the front three is a concern. I almost think let's just keep playing them and get as many points on the board as we can. And then if they get injured after that, hopefully we're still okay. But it is a concern. And who would have thought that, when we signed Beidou for big money, Al-Haj for big money, Tijani coming back to fitness, that we would be sort of so reliant in the front three of the players of the title-winning League One season and Bundu, who came in on summer deadline day 2023, in our new era of relatively big spending. I'd say relatively because it's relative to previous Argyle teams. It's certainly not big spending relative to the rest of the league. But in this new era of quote-unquote big spending Argyle, we're reliant on Ryan Hardy, who joined us, not even under Schumacher, who joined us on the low, for goodness sake, Callum Wright, who joined us under Schumacher in the January of the title season, and Bundu, who joined us under Schumacher in the summer deadline day of 2023. So, yeah, let's just hope the three of them stay fit. Let's just hope that those who do come in, Obafemi or Tijani in the upfront central striker role, step up to the plate if they have to. I'm a little bit more confident that Al-Haj would step up to the plate if he has to. And I would like to try Mumba there. Whether Muslic will or not, I don't know. But, yeah, hopefully these three continue to defy the odds and stay fit.
James, anything to add on this general area before we move on to a preview of the Blackburn game?
I totally agree with Sam on options up front, especially the Bundu position, which does seem odd that Muslic didn't fancy putting Tijani on for a few more minutes in a dead rubber 4-0. At the end of this game could have been some more vital evidence on Tijani. I don't know if we had a mixed game, and when he came on against Liverpool, obviously trusted him to come into that situation. I didn't really feel like he added anything to the press, but he made some really good defensive headers and possibly could have scored himself the diving header. So still feel like we're talking about very low amounts of sample data with Tijani, and we still don't really know, but doesn't really seem to be too positive. What I would say on a more positive note is with the defense. Like, I know the idea of Katic or Maxi getting injured is just too horrific to think about, but now we actually have a defensive structure which we've never had before. I do think that players can rotate in and thrive within that system in a solid structure with plenty of screening and the sort of midfield solidity and structure in front of them, less haphazardly than before. And we are seeing obviously the likes of Valbetta and Paulson coming into the team and doing well when they have a defensive structure that they're drilled in and happy in. So I feel a little bit more optimistic defensively about our attacking options. And I do really agree with Sam on that Al-Haj looked bright. And I do feel that he has that. I feel like with our front three, the pressing's great. Obviously, the turnovers that they produce are fantastic, and they're all really sort of powerful players that can drive forward. But Al-Haj has that level of quality to unlock defenses, which I don't think the other three have in quite the same way. So I think that's a really interesting option, and hopefully he gets himself into contention pretty soon. Because I think I saw positive signs there.
Okay. Anything else to add on Millwall before we move on quickly to preview the Blackburn game? Okay, I think we do just have 1 second for Sam to pay tribute to his returning idol, Luke Cundall. That's your 1 second. There we go. That's over, and we don't have to talk about him anymore. Onto the Blackburn game. We have a very big trip to Lancashire coming up on Saturday, having plugged the however many holes it is in the Beatles song in our side since the last time we played them, even though, of course, we did beat them in what was our last win for ages and ages and ages and ages. And our last win, in fact, under Wayne Rooney, as it would turn out,
You forgot the Pompey game,
in
clearly.
early October.
You
and
forgot
that's
the Pompey
completely
game.
incorrect because we beat Portsmouth in between. I was just going based on your metric of games that we deserve to win as opposed to games that we actually did win. Yes, of course, we beat Portsmouth in November. But I think many people would say the last game under Rooney, where it felt really positive and like we were the better side, deserved to win. So we still haven't won away from home in the league this season. Blackburn, we know, will be a tough test, but some big news for them ahead of our trip, which is that surprisingly, given how well run a club they are, John Eustace has decided to jump ship for the challenge of keeping Derby County in the Championship rather than getting Blackburn into the playoffs. Sam, I'll come to you. Were you surprised by that move, and what sort of impact do you think it will have? Firstly, let's just ask you what sort of impact you think it might have on Derby's season, given that it's that's a question of concern to us in that relegation scrap. And then, what do you think it might mean for Blackburn on Saturday?
Yeah, good question. My initial reaction was I was concerned because I do think he is a good manager. And if you look at it as an overall big picture of the two jobs he's done, you have, I know he managed Kidderminster like about 1 million years ago, but the two jobs he's done at this level in recent years, you have to put a big green tick next to both of them, because Birmingham, he kept them up when I think everyone and their dog had them 24th, and they won the 24s, used to get them up comfortably. And then they had money come in, and he had them 6th in the league before he was inexplicably sacked for some manager or other. Can't quite remember who.
The league.
Yeah. Hang on, you what?
It's the league, not the league.
Yeah, it was
6th in the
really
league.
not sure that Birmingham accent was worth a 10-second interruption, but there we go. John Eustace, who did very well at Birmingham and then got the job at Blackburn, kept them up, which was what he was brought in to do. And then this season, again, as with Birmingham, left with them in the playoffs, only this time off his own volition rather than because he was sacked. So you have to say, he got two clubs who weren't really fancied into the top 6. So that's a really impressive achievement from him. However, the one bit of positive I will take from it he seems to take a little bit of time to get his style going. So obviously, with regard to that, I do wonder if maybe it might not be quite such bad news as what we thought it was, because naturally at Birmingham he started quite slowly and then they climbed to about 17th by the end of the season, and at Blackburn he started really slow. I think there was like only one win in his first 8 or so, and then he eventually then got them to the point whereby they got to a pretty high point standing. And yes, they only stayed up on the last day. And yes, you could argue, yeah, Leicester were on the beach and all that. But let's not forget, they got 53 points, which majority of teams just keep throughout the game or two to spare. So I think on the whole, you still have to say he did a good job there last season.
They did also have the best player in the Championship playing for them in that time. And I think it is inarguable they would have gone down if they did not have Sami Szmodics.
Yeah, but if they didn't have Sami Szmodics, they would have been sacked at an earlier stage. Thomason would have gone at an earlier stage, and Eustace would have come in at an earlier stage, and it's butterfly effect. And I still think you have to say he did fine to keep them up. But he's starting from a worse position with Derby than what he was with Blackburn, and they could find him in big trouble. And I'm just going to have to quickly turn my camera off because my housemate is coming home to watch the darts, so I'm going to have to do the last segment in my room. So I've given my view on Eustace. I think he will be a good appointment for them long term. I think he'll get them back up if they go down, but at the same time, he has started slowly at both his other clubs. So maybe that's something that's positive for us.
Sam is standing up because he loves the darts, apparently. So, James, I'll come to you for the second half of the question. Sam addressed the Derby portion of it, but what sort of impact do you expect Eustace's departure might have on Blackburn on Saturday? Obviously, I believe they won last night at West Brom, which is an impressive result, albeit West Brom a bit up and down at the moment, no pun intended, with the boinging. But yeah, what could we expect? Obviously, he wasn't officially out of the building for last night's game, I don't believe, or perhaps he was, but it was certainly sort of around the time that they would have been preparing for that game that it was all getting finalised. First sort of home game under a caretaker manager, assuming they don't get anybody in between now and then, which I think is a fairly safe assumption. How do you see it playing out?
Well, it makes it difficult to call because we don't know how galvanised the squad are about the situation. Obviously, it could be a unifying situation for them, which may just mean that they're sort of on it that little bit more, where obviously they're feeling that their playoff push will be under threat by Eustace leaving, and I don't know how that will have been communicated internally. We don't know. We don't even know much about the reasons for him leaving at all. So it could make it that little bit more difficult. It could add a bit of spice to the crowd. Again, we don't really know the effects of that. They're in such. It's not like he's walked out with them on the verge of relegation. You know, they're in a great position. So I imagine, like, if you imagine the same thing happening, and when it has happened, when Shuey left, and you know, it galvanizes the fan base as well. So I actually think it probably adds an extra level of spice to the fixture that would make it hard to call. But then maybe chaos and Muslic ball go hand in hand. So yeah, it's very hard to tell what kind of reaction that it could spur, really.
This is the point where Aaron or Joe would normally ask if there are any players to particularly watch out for on the Blackburn side of things. But surely, as Aaron has pointed out in the comments, there's only one player who needs to be the danger man that we watch for them on Saturday, right, Sam?
Yeah, it feels inevitable that Adam Forshaw will get his only goal for Blackburn against us. It's one of those, it feels almost as inevitable as night following day. But then again, I would have said that about Luke Cundle last night, and he didn't. Although to belatedly nibble to John winding me up about Luke Cundle, I do think
to be fair, Sam, Cundle has already had his redemption arc game against us, so he got that out of the way last season at Stoke, and then
true. I do actually think he was one of the better players last night, if I'm being honest. I thought he was okay at times, but very funny when Sorinola booted the ball against Cundle for supposedly time wasting when he was absolutely not time wasting at all. Just plays into the whole concept of us being tough to play against under Muslic, and having that nasty side to us. We are learning the dark arts a little bit more, learning how to maybe wind people up a little bit more. which I'm all in favour of to an extent. I don't want it to become like, Diego Costa levels or like Wickham under Gareth Ainsworth levels. That's not what I like to see, but there's a healthy level of it. And I think if we find that healthy level of it, that's great. That's another tangent. Forshaw, the danger man. It was such an odd signing. I guess Blackburn signed him thinking they were going to get Leeds Forshaw, thinking they were going to get Bielsa Forshaw, but that player's gone. His legs are gone. Like maybe in like a lower league, like a League One, in a role where he just has to sit in and be like a midfield metronome, he might be okay, but he's nowhere near Championship level. Certainly not in the way that managers are trying to use him as at all. And it's baffling that Blackburn signed him. I mean, even their fans so far are kind of quite bemused that as to why on earth they signed him. So it's really is an odd one for sure. To pardon the pun, I wonder if Blackburn will also manage to spell his name correctly on their shirts. Like that we did not do in the first game of the season. But it's with Blackburn, when you look at their team man for man, they've got a lot of good players, but they've not got, I would say, any real absolute Championship superstars. Obviously, nor do we on paper, but it's interesting to kind of see that they have really been built on youth success. The impact it will have on them is interesting. There might be a sort of a galvanization effect whereby they really pull together and get a good couple of wins, but I think it's more likely that Eustace was just the one holding it together, and that in the medium term they drop out of the playoffs. I really hope that there's a bit, they had a good win as well this game week. They won 2-0 at West Brom, big playoff battle game. So hopefully there's a touch of after the Lord's Mayor show for them. I think the first away win of the season, though, is about due, and I think it's going to come on Saturday.
In that case, I think that's a good preview of Blackburn. So why don't we just move on to the score predictions with that, unless James, you have something else to add on it?
No, let's do it.
All right, Sam, you've said that we'll win the game. What's your actual prediction for the score?
2-1 to Argyle.
James?
I just really struggle superstitiously to predict Argyle wins, so I'm just going to go 1-1.
And I am, as you know, sticking with the predictions that I made in our podcast prediction league at the beginning of the month, which, by the way, I nearly abandoned for the Millwall game after saying we would win in that prediction league, to say that we wouldn't win after the Liverpool game. And, of course, we did win. Unfortunately, I believe that my prediction in that was Blackburn 2, Plymouth Argyle 1. So, I'll stick with that. I could just see us having a defeat to a very good team where we're just sort of the wrong goal, the odd goal in 3 on the wrong side of it. I don't anticipate that will mean it's a complete disaster or we have no chance of staying up. I think we've done amazingly, frankly, to get ourselves from a position where we were 7 points adrift to being 1 point adrift in a matter of a couple of weeks is extraordinary. If that goes back to 4 in the worst case scenario, I don't think that's anything to panic about in the short term. This is probably a game where it will be a bonus if we can get anything. So I would absolutely take a point. But we will see. Just to address one comment, by the way, Mike Hughes says Ennis is at Blackpool. Actually, in fact, yes, he says Ennis is at Blackpool, which is true. I was referring back to an earlier comment from Graham Byrne, who had asked, isn't Ennis at Blackburn? No, Mike Hughes is correct. Ennis is at Blackpool, I believe, on loan from Blackburn. This is a lot of teams that have similar names and a bit tongue-twistery.
Went from Blackburn to Stoke.
Oh, yes, he is. Oh, you're absolutely mad this evening.
You're having a great job.
That's right. This was after Ennis. Ennis famously was allowed to go by Blackburn last January because they had signed an American striker to replace him, where I believe they forgot to file the paperwork, and that player did not, in fact, sign for them. Right. And Thomason, I believe, walked out in a huff as a result of that, which meant they got Eustace in the first place, which obviously
I think it was a few weeks after. He basically went into the media and not so subtly called the ownership a complete shambles, and then left about a month after that, I think.
Correct. I think I'm going to put myself out of my pixelated, low concentration, mistake-ridden misery by ending the pod, unless anyone has anything else to add before we head off. No, well, that just remains for me then to thank 1,233 of you who are listening on all platforms, to thank James and Sam for their time. As always, whatever Aaron says at the end of podcasts as well, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff.
No, I think it's love
we
you
will
bye,
see you. And I haven't got to that bit yet. We will see you on Sunday night after the Stoke away game on Saturday. Love you, bye.